I really need is one shot. Now they tryna get their hands in the pot. Damn, what you got? Grams. Where you at? Land. Cooking with the pan.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. So let's talk about the Sasha Banks Broken Skull sessions real quick. Now, I watched this whole thing. I took 5 pages of notes, and I distilled it down to 1 page. I'm not about to spend that much time talking about this woman. I'm not. I'm only going to talk about 4 subjects that she talked about. 1, Ronda Rousey. 2, her hiatus. 3, her changing the business. 4, her being headstrong and or focused. It didn't really occur to me until I started watching this that Sasha Banks is girl Shawn Michaels. Like, the attitude, the entitlement, the chip on the shoulder, the ego. She is girl Shawn Michaels. She is one of the most spoiled and entitled wrestlers I have ever heard talk. I've listened to a lot of shooter interviews with a lot of people saying a lot of shit. I don't think I have ever heard somebody who is as arrogant as Sasha Banks. And look, there's some of the stuff that she says that I'm not against. Like, some of her attitudes and stuff I'm not against. But she is like the Mariah Carey of the WWE. I'm talking like, I think Sasha Banks only has yellow M&Ms in a bowl in her finely pink carpeted dressing room. Like, that's what I get from listening to her. I don't know. Like, I'm not even a Sasha Banks hater. I love Sasha Banks. I think she's great. She's a fantastic performer. That's why I think she's girl Shawn Michaels. Like, she backs it up in the ring. But Jesus, like, her attitude is very snotty. Very snotty. But, I mean, I don't know. Like, it's hard to know what her background is. But let's talk about this. The first thing that I wanted to discuss is that she clearly got a bee in her bonnet about Ronda Rousey. Now, I don't think that her problem is with Ronda Rousey personally. She said that Ronda Rousey was cool, but her thing was, and I think she didn't say it, but I'm looking at the context that she was said. She said, you can bring in Ronda Rousey, but you should be paying me to do what she's doing. That she has the talent and she's put in the work. And so to me, Ronda Rousey at one point was the highest paid female athlete, right? And she only did a year of work. So she got paid more than all the other girls to do less. So somebody in the position of a Sasha Banks, who was, one of the top girls, probably saw Ronda Rousey come in, make all this money for a short run, and was not working nearly as hard as she was. And she kind of got booted to the side because she said that her motivation to going into Royal Rumble 2019 was to tell the company to stop forgetting about her. Stop forgetting about me. Like, don't forget me. Stop forgetting about me. So obviously what Ronda Rousey was being paid, how Ronda Rousey kind of took positions, I think that bothered her. And it would make sense that it would. It would make sense that it would. And that she also says later that she's not a super fan anymore. That she's not just thankful to be there. She's not happy for hot dogs and pizza. And she's a businesswoman. And she's there to handle business. And she says, I eat steak just like Vince McMahon. I'm on Vince McMahon's level. And of course, that's delusional. But at the same time, I get what she's trying to say. She's trying to say, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a businesswoman. If you're going to pay Ronda Rousey all this money, you should be paying me. Right? I'm the one that's here all the time. I'm the one putting in the work. I'm the one doing the Make-A-Wish. You should be paying me. I 100% support that idea. And even though the way that she put it was kind of snotty and I didn't like her delivery, the content of it, like when you put it all together, there's nothing wrong with it. She's out there damn near breaking her neck all the time. She should get paid more. She should demand to get paid more. And I'm okay with that. She is one of the top girls. She's not some Sarah Logan or some, small town girl, who they didn't really do that much with. She's a top woman. She is one of the main, most marketed female athletes in the company. She deserves to be able to go into the office and be like, I cannot believe you paying Ronda Rousey all this money. and you're not paying me all this money. Like, you got to change that. That needs to change. And maybe at the time when she said she was a quote unquote super fan, she didn't know what the possibilities were, and that she was just kind of happy to be there. But as her responsibilities increased, as her name value increased, her face increased, marketability increased, character and everything like that increased, and you see somebody else just come leap in front of you, it's not her fault. It's not Ronda Rousey's fault. And she said that Ronda was cool, even though Ronda has said some really outlandish shit since, and while she was under contract and since she left. But she said that Ronda was really cool, really humble. She didn't have a problem with Ronda personally. It had to be the way that the company was positioning Ronda and the things that they paid Ronda and gave to Ronda they didn't give to anybody else. And I can 100% I am Mr. Stars get treated differently. I 100% believe that. Ronda Rousey is a star. She should get treated differently. She should get paid more. She was a bigger star. And she should work less because she shouldn't be overexposed, But that doesn't mean that Sasha Banks isn't also a star and shouldn't also have been making a lot of money too. Now, you can justify paying Ronda more money, but I don't know what the pay disparity between the two was. If it was enough to piss her off, and it sounds like she's still pretty mad about it. So I'm okay with her going out there and getting what she wants. I just don't like the tude, the way that she came across. She also said that Ronda Rousey separated her shoulder, which happened at the end of the match. But that was really interesting stuff. Like, you had to combine those two pieces because she didn't come out and say anything negative. And I think this also ties into the hiatus. In 18 or 19 rather, Sasha Banks took 5 months off following WrestleMania 35. She and Bayley lost the women's tag team titles. Now, the Ronda Rousey thing ties into this because Sasha Banks thought she was going to go into the Royal Rumble, do whatever, and then go into Elimination Chamber to win the women's tag team titles. Then she was told she was going to wrestle Ronda Rousey. So then she thought, okay, the tag team title thing is not going to happen. And then she says, okay, well, she settled down and she focused on, what I said earlier about telling the company through her performance that they should be paying her and not forgetting her and, and focusing on her. And then she says that when she tore her shoulder, on the finish, she tore her shoulder. And she thought no WrestleMania, no Elimination Chamber, no nothing, that she was going to be done. So she said she kept it a secret. She didn't tell anybody about her shoulder. So then she worked through Elimination Chamber because she wanted those tag team titles that badly. And then they took them off of them at WrestleMania 35. And then she said that she was burnt out. And I particularly thought this was interesting too, because she says that she was unhappy, that she was she was hitting depression. But the most important thing to me is that she said she was forgetting who she was, that she hadn't seen her own real hair, and she kept seeing purple hair all the time, and that she didn't hear her own real name, that she was always called Sasha, 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 and that she was being consumed by the character. This is something that a lot of wrestlers have talked about, that they end up living the gimmick. I think Sasha Banks is living the gimmick now, but that's neither here nor there. But she was personally feeling like her personal self was being replaced with the Sasha Banks character, and she needed some time to get those two things together. And I'm glad she caught it. And this is where, famously, of course, she said she went to Vince and she wanted to quit. And she wanted to leave WWE, and Vince said, no, I'll give you 30 days. And she ended up taking 5 months. She went to therapy. She went to Japan to do some training with Meiko Satomura. And she wanted to do a lot of different things that she had missed doing. And she said that her love of wrestling had not gone, but it was starting to shift. That she was, was feeling burned out for a while, so she needed that time at home. But it was starting to grow and become something else. So that was really, I thought particularly those two things made sense, because she wasn't getting what she wanted, for typical Shawn Michaels stuff, right? It was, she actually did the job. So that's like the two different things. Like, she's actually willing to do the jobs. But when things aren't going her way, she seems to not like being around very much, But Steve Austin was like, "Hey, I done gonna walked out too, man. I can't even blame you. I walked out too for a piece of business." And then he asked her the question like, "Did you lose your spot? Like, what happened?" She's like, "Obviously, I didn't lose my spot." I was like, "What?" Well, it was what it was, though. I thought that was very interesting. I thought that particular stuff was good stuff. You know, how she talked about the locker room, how she talked about the business. There seems to be, like she said, like I said, a chip on her shoulder about the business. And so she started talking about changing the business, how she wanted to change the business for the women. So a couple of months ago, probably last year or 2 years ago, no, it was last year, around January of 2020, NXT changed their NXT women's title to the NXT title. And there was two NXT titles, and people was tripping out. Like, why are there two NXT titles? And people went traced back to Becky Lynch making a statement about they shouldn't label the women's matches anymore. And then people started blaming her that they had taken the gender of the women's title off the women's title. And she said, "Oh, I don't have that kind of power. I didn't make that decision. I don't have that kind of power." And then of course people got tired of it and they switched it back. They went back to being an NXT women's title. Similarly, we now find out who got the butterfly belt killed. It was Sasha Banks. She hated the butterfly belt. She also hated the term diva. So it was her basically pouting. Well, I'm pretty sure there was a team of them, but she was willing to take sort of the heat for it, that she didn't like the butterfly belt. So she says, she asked Austin, "Would you carry the butterfly belt?" He was like, "No." And she was like, "Roman wouldn't carry it. You wouldn't carry it. Cena wouldn't carry it. Why would we carry it? We shouldn't have to carry it. You need to treat us the same as the men." Of course, she would, the whole treat us the same as the men thing didn't quite hold up when you, we'll get to that later though. But, so she says that she didn't want to do the butterfly belt. She didn't want nothing to do with that. She didn't want anything to do with the term diva. They wanted to change things. And it was basically her and the same crew, that there always is that wanted to change things. Now, I don't have a problem with the whole getting rid of the Divas era or getting rid of the butterfly belt. I don't really care about that stuff. But it's just an interesting thing because we see that a lot of the changes that happen, the women getting tag team titles, that was her and Bayley, right? And, so you see that when they get together and they get to nagging, let's not call it nagging. Let's call it negotiating, quote unquote, negotiating. And they're pushing and pitching that they want things changed, that they obviously can get them changed, So they have some kind of power. And this is what I mean by she's kind of girl Shawn Michaels, and this is kind of the clique. They shouldn't be called the Four Horsewomen. It should be called the fucking clique. The cliquettes or something. Because apparently these four women just have so much authority they can manifest things. And she says that, she's been manifesting stuff into the world. She's very spiritual in that way. But she says that the butterfly belt is something that I thought was very weird because when you look in Japan, they have star belts, like Stardom and like all these other female promotions. They have like weird shaped belts too for their women's promotions. Like there's literally promotions that are calling their events Cinderella Dream and all that type of very super feminine stuff. And they want to be nothing like the men. They want to just wrestle competitively like the men, but they still want to be women at the same time. Whereas Sasha Banks is kind of like, well, I'm the best, whether it's a man or a woman, or, treat us just like the men, call the men superstars, call us superstars, get rid of the butterfly belt, make our belt look just like theirs, and that kind of thing. And if she didn't want to have divas matches, quote unquote, meaning she didn't want to have short matches. She wanted time. This is something that she also said recently too, outside of this podcast, that she thought she should get as much time on screen as Roman Reigns. I think what did she say this? Oh shit! It was 2020. She said this, that she was unhappy with how much time she was getting on screen, and she felt like she should have got more time, and that if Roman can cut promos and do all this stuff, she should also be getting the same amount of time. So obviously it didn't happen. It didn't happen, but she has been really vocal about that. And she says that she wanted to change the women's division from being puppies and popcorn breaks to being, oh, I can't walk away. These women's matches are on. And that she didn't really want to do photo shoots. And when her first, like Cecilia said, her first year on the main roster, they had her do well, it's not photo shoots that she didn't want to do. It was, she didn't want to do quote unquote diva stuff. And I think that's basically where she was going with it. Like, a lot of the Divas era, they would do like these calendar shoots or what, like holiday stuff. And they had her do one. And she said the next year it was gone. Like, so apparently somebody must have dropped the bug and was like, yeah, we're not doing the women's photo shoots and stuff like that anymore. Even though I guess they still do them, but I guess they had the option now. They don't have to. And I think that's what it sounded like, is that, it went from being a thing that was expected for them to do to now it's an option for them to do it. And she just chooses not to. But, and she also talked about, she came into the company near the end of the quote unquote Shark Tank locker room, where people used to put, your bag in the shower and stuff like that. And I was like, I never heard of anything like that happening to Sasha Banks. Would be interesting if she was actually go into like some detail about that. That's something I would want to go into detail about. Who was putting showers and bags in the shower? Who was being a douchebag? Who was being a bully? That would be very interesting stuff to learn. But she didn't go into that. But basically, she said she wanted to change women's wrestling. She wanted to change the locker room. She credits Bayley with changing the locker room, because she said it was very cutthroat, especially even in NXT. It was very cutthroat. And that, people will be willing to push each other in front of a speeding car for an opportunity, but now it's not like that anymore. And that, people are more cooperative and stuff like that. And that, Bayley, that was Bayley's influence on the locker room. And Bayley pretty much talked about that when she talked to Stone Cold Steve Austin, that she had always been sort of the leader, but she was very not seen as much as being as marketable or, out there as Sasha and the rest of them. But so that was very interesting too. And I can't say that what they did is wrong or that their influence has been negative. So I want people to understand, like, if you may say like, oh, you're talking shit about Sasha Banks. It's like, I'm just talking about more her tone, because I don't think anything's wrong with her content. Like, I don't see anything wrong with, you shouldn't have to do photo shoots if you don't want to. Okay. I don't want to carry the butterfly belt. Okay. If you didn't see, the thing is, when the guys had the spinner belt though, they didn't get a choice, right? There was a lot of guys who hated that fucking spinner belt. They still had to carry it, and that's fucked up, so, like that's fucked up, right? Like, when there was a lot of guys who, when John Cena had that spinner belt, they didn't want to carry that spinner belt. They talked about how much they hated it. Edge was one of them. Edge said he hated the spinner belt, and then when he was told he was going to get his own belt, he went and drew one up and thought they were going to give him his own belt, and they just gave him the spinner belt with rated R in the middle. And then they did the same thing with the Miz. They just turned the W upside down. And, those guys. So it goes to show that, Sasha Banks, at the very least, and maybe Becky Lynch and Charlotte, have some type of clout, that they have clout. And there's nothing wrong with that. You should always want to have leverage in your workplace. That's a beautiful thing, especially for them to be valued in such a way. It's good. It's awesome. But I think that when people start to talk about things that they don't like, they have to be able to be like, well, that was us. That was us. We changed that. It's too bad if you don't like it. And therefore, when people start saying like there needs to be the Divas era back and all that type of shit, it's never coming back. And here's the thing about bringing things back. I'm under the impression that most things, when they're gone, they're gone. So the idea, we're going to bring back the Divas, it's like, it's just mental masturbation to even go through all that. It's not happening. In today's political climate, it's just not going to happen for you to get the Divas division back and bra and panties matches and mud shows, mud matches. Shit's not happening. It's not going to happen. It's a waste of your breath to even keep talking about it. It's just not going to happen. You should just, just accept that it's not going to happen. And if you want to continue to be like, well, we need to have those kinds of matches, like, you're delusional. You're deluding yourself. It's not going to happen. They have changed the business now where, and with all the human resources and all that shit going on, these companies, it's not going to happen. You can't even really ask them to do that kind of stuff anymore. So that stuff was interesting. I found those steps to be profoundly interesting. I also found her career, how she got started and stuff like that interesting. Now I have to actually look at my old notes before to get to some of the interesting background stuff. So she said she first saw wrestling when she was about 2 or 3, but didn't know what it was. But she was going to school online. So she was an online student. She didn't physically go to school. And that she became a fan at 10 years old. And by 12, she was studying wrestling and trying to figure out how to become a wrestler. And she talked about her family life. Her brother has autism. Her mom didn't have a job, and they were living in a hotel. And she left school to help her brother and all that type of stuff. All that stuff I can relate to because I had to quit school for the same reasons. So she started talking about how she trained at Chaotic Wrestling with Brian Malonis, who works in Ring of Honor. It's like when she said that name, I was like, that sounds familiar. And then I remember, like, yeah, he's the partner for the Beer City Bruiser. He's one of the I forget what the bar fighter brawlers or some shit like that. But yeah, he's a big fat guy. Handsome Johnny, who is Ivar the Viking Raider. So that means her trainer works there with her. And Brian Fury, she trained with them at Chaotic Wrestling. And she started talking about how she did fantasy camps and how everything hurted, the first bump and the ropes and everything. But I was particularly interested in how she had a chip on her shoulder about, and this is kind of, set up like this show. It tells you a lot about the character of the people, right? Like you get to see what kind of person Sasha Banks is just from this particular clip. When she talked about Chaotic Wrestling getting a phone call from WWE, and they were looking for extras, and Chaotic Wrestling picked certain guys to be extras, and she wasn't picked, but she figured she was better than everybody that they picked, so she went behind their back, emailed WWE, and got a job as an extra anyway, and just kind of did it on her own. Like that kind of go-getter spirit is pretty. That's pretty rare. Like there's a lot of people who would have been bitter about that and done nothing but complain. She went up there and was like, and that's part of being, if you want to say, well, she's bitchy, or whatever. That's part of it. That's the good thing, is that she's not going to sit around and just be victimized. She's actually going to go out there and do something. She was in a position where she felt like the guys who were picked to be extras were the shits. She was good. And she figured, hey, what could it hurt if I just contact and say, look, I want to come in and do something. And then they found something for her to do. And it was pretty cool. So I always appreciate that people take the initiative and do their own thing. So I don't have a problem with that. So then she starts talking about how much, she learned from the other trainers, Norman Smiley, Dusty Rhodes, and Joey Mercury. She gave them a lot of credit for helping her with her confidence and her in-ring skills, specifically Joey Mercury and Norman Smiley on her in-ring skills. Xavier Woods and Tyler Breeze helped her come up with the boss character because she said she felt like she was going to get fired. She had been in NXT for a little while, and she was not improving. And her promos were not improving because she had nothing to say. And she says that, this is a gem for people who are wrestling fans, is that she says that your character gives you something to say. Promos become easier when you find a character. And that's something that, folks need to understand. And I'm glad she dropped that little nugget in there. There's a lot of things you can learn from Sasha Banks if you can get through the obviously, I'll talk about it later. But she basically says that the boss character was designed after Snoop Dogg. That her and Snoop are first cousins, but she didn't grow up with him. Obviously, he's related to her birth father, who it might be her, dad's brother or something like that, or dad's brother's cousin or some shit. But she didn't grow up with him, and she only really saw him when he would come to town to do shows, or that one time she begged him to take her to WrestleMania, which I believe was WrestleMania 32 in Orlando. She said she begged him to take her to there. And she had got a lot of her confidence from Dusty Rhodes. And, Dusty Rhodes has been, he's notorious for his impact on NXT, especially on the confidence and promos of a lot of the performers that were in NXT. So that's a really great thing. So I really appreciate the effort that she puts in. And that's why I'm kind of okay with how she talks. Like, I don't like it because I don't like when people just are super egotistical like this. But Sasha Banks does work very hard. And she has worked very hard. And she has delivered in the ring. Like I said, she's girl Shawn Michaels. Like, you can not like them. You can say she's a piece of shit. You can say she's a bitch and all this type of stuff. But fuck, she delivers. She does not have bad matches. Now, she may have some matches that are not as good, but she doesn't go out there and shit the bed and then has a super ego about different things that take place. So there are some things that I thought were pretty weird. Now, earlier I talked about, Sasha Banks talking about she wants to change the business. She wanted the women to get treated just like the men. But then we found out Sasha Banks hates being chopped. The only other person I heard complain about being chopped was Raven. Raven hates chops. She hates kendo sticks. She doesn't want to work another Hell in a Cell match because they hurt. So she says that for a shoot, she does not want to work another Hell in a Cell match. She, for a shoot, only wants to work a Royal Rumble if she can come in later. So she doesn't want, because she worked the first ever Women's Royal Rumble, and she thought it was fun because she got to work with all the legends and everything, like Lita and Trish Stratus and all them. But the match was very long, because I think she was in the match for 54 minutes or something like that. And even Austin has said that he didn't like working Royal Rumbles because it was too much detail for him to remember. So it was, it's not like she was alone in that. That, he says a fun match to win, but it's not a fun match to be in. But, it's hard to say that you want to be treated like the men when the men got to go through Elimination Chamber matches and you're like, oh, the Elimination Chamber match, oh, it hurts. I kind of want to avoid that if I can. And I hate chops. And, why do we even have kendo sticks was one of her comments. It's like, I don't even understand why we have kendo sticks. It's like, you want to get treated like the guys, but then you want to be like, oh, I'm small, so I might get hurt. And it's like, bullshit. You want to get treated like the guys or you don't. And that's really when I was kind of like, you gotta piss or get off the pot. The guys are falling off shit. You want them to cede time to you, to give you just as much time as Roman. And Roman is getting hit with chairs and kendo sticks and getting handcuffed to stuff. And, he's doing cell matches. He's doing chambers and stuff like that, even though he didn't work the actual Elimination Chamber 2021. But he's done Elimination Chamber matches, I believe. Done Hell in a Cell matches, and you don't want to do anymore. You did 3 and like, oh, that's it. I'm done. And it's like, you're 29. Like, you're not going to ever work another Hell in a Cell match again. It's like that kind of stuff made me believe that she's basically just being a diva, and that, maybe there's some truth there to it being hard and it sucks. And of course it's hard and it sucks, but it doesn't just hurt just for you. It hurts for everybody. Chops suck. I've seen, like, go look at Daniel Bryan's chest sometimes when he has some of these matches and he's in it guy looks like he's been through an immersion blender. That's pro wrestling. That's what you claim you loved. You said you had no plan B. You wanted to be a pro wrestler from the beginning. It was WWE or bust. It's like the nature of the business of getting hit with chairs, working chamber matches, working Hell in the Cells, getting hit with kendo sticks, traveling, all the things that you say that you hate. That's the nature of the business. Now, I do believe that she said that, 2020 was one of the easiest, best years that she's ever worked because the travel has been restricted. Now, she had talked about this before, too, and outside of this interview, she's talked about how, being able to go to work once a week has been a boom, and she felt like it's extended her career. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people feel the same way because you don't have to travel as much. You probably make more money because you're spending less money. So you probably feel like you have more money than you really had, and then you're probably getting paid a little bit more anyway. But so the last thing I want to talk about, of course, they talk a lot about the 4 horsewomen and about how they came to be and all that sort of thing. But she basically just says that she felt like Charlotte was like her magic partner, and she said Bayley is somebody I felt in my heart before I ever even met her. I don't even know how that works, but that's pretty damn sweet. And I don't know anybody who could say something about that for about another human being. That's pretty damn sweet. And I'm glad that that she feels that way, and that she gets to work with these people that she really enjoys working with. And she said she really likes the locker room, that the SmackDown locker room inspires her, and that she sees the potential in everybody, and that she just kind of wants to bring that potential out. So that was all very good. And, there was a lot of nooks and crannies and different things like that in here that, I don't really want to go into. Those are just the things I really, when I was watching it, that I picked up on and said, you know what, those things are particularly interesting. That she came to the PC and basically got stripped down and had to start over and had to learn the WWE style. What she said involves camera work and promos and character and all that type of stuff, acting, different things like that. Things you don't have to do on the indies, which of course we already know that, but these people think that you're just working. Oh, you need to learn what a hard cam is. That doesn't take, her and Steve Austin dropped another nugget talking about selling up, basically selling towards the cameras so that people can see your face, and not having your back to the hard cam and that sort of stuff. Those things that people talk about a lot in WWE, that, folks think that, oh, you just want to know what a hard camera is. Like, if you watch old wrestling, these guys have their back to the hard camera all the time, like literally all the time, and nobody cares because it was a different time. But this was very interesting. It was pretty interesting. Sasha Banks, now, what I was going to say earlier is I thought it better not to go into is that Sasha Banks she sounds very fake. Like, she sounds very fake. Like, she just sounds fake. Like, she doesn't really, like, she has a bad attitude. And she sounds like, it's just very hard to explain. But her laugh sounds fake. And everything. And I was just kind of like, I don't know. Like, and I'm going to say this too, because I'm fuck biting my tongue. What is it about therapy that makes people, specifically women, worse? I've never met a woman who go to therapy and came out better than when she went in. They almost always come out worse. Like, now Sasha Banks probably is in a better mental space now that she went through therapy. And hopefully that's the best. But her attitude seems to have gotten worse. But, considering I didn't listen to her talk very much before, it's hard to tell. But I'm glad she is happy now, apparently. She's good with her position, and she's, hopefully everything is ironed out and she's okay with all the stuff that's going on now. But we have a lot of these. It's a real trip listening to Sasha Banks for an hour and a half, dog. Like, it was harsh. It was harsh because her tone is not correct. It's not. And maybe it's because she's, a little bit more direct and a little bit more, matter of fact. But, it's just it's very bitchy, and it didn't come across like Bayley. Like Bayley came across, a lot nicer, a lot more personable. Sasha Banks came across like she was a snob. And I think that, it's hard to, to forget stuff like that. But then again, I don't know the girl personally, so I don't know. Maybe it's just how she is on camera, but not a fan. Not a fan of her attitude, man. So we got to go with she's girl Shawn Michaels, to have to deal with her to a degree and enjoy her work, and that's about it. But let me know what you guys thought about Smoker Skull Sessions if you watched it. Let me know in the comment section below. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. Also, want to send me cash, please do so via the Cash App. It will be in the comment section below. Thank you guys for your time, and I'll talk to you guys later.